Hi everyone, and welcome to the first part of the tutorial on Mr. Sandman in the version of the original Grandmaster, Chet Atkins. Before we dive in, a quick shout out to my top tier patrons. This lesson will be made up out of 3 parts, and only this first part will be released on YouTube. For full access and loads of extras, please head over to my Patreon page. If you are looking for the tab and notation file, then click the music notes link down below in the description. Mr. Sandman was Chet's first big hit, and it solidified his name as a stellar guitar player. Much of this lesson was taken from the live version that has been on YouTube for quite a while, and the song is an interesting showcase of how pop music and guitar playing has evolved. The version we are looking at today was recorded in the early 1950s, so by now we have close to 70 years of technical development on the guitar behind us. That means that those among you who are already adept at fingerpicking might find the picking patterns in this song rather easy, or at least easier than some of the insane Tommy Emmanuel stuff we often dissect here. At the same time, it also shows how hard the harmonic content of pop music has been dumbed down over those decades. This song makes use of very colorful chords, most of them more at home in jazz and big band music than current pop music. So even if the picking patterns feel easy, some of these chords will still provide a challenge. Okay, so let's start picking then. The guitar is in standard tuning. I'm using a thumb pick, as of course the great Chet Atkins did. I guess it's possible to play this one without the thumb pick too. It's not too fast, there are no complicated runs in there. So let's have a look at the intro first. You know the saying, the sting is in the tail. Well, the sting in this one is definitely one of the first things you are going to feel. There is a huge stretch in there, actually 2 of them. So don't click away as soon as you see them thinking I'm never going to be able to pull this off. I will provide an alternative that is a bit easier on the left hand. But first, how Chet used to play it in concert. Those are not easy chord shapes. We start out with the easy bit, a little run up, a little bass line, pinky on the 7th fret on the A string, index finger 4th fret on the D string, ring finger 6th fret on the D string, and then we end up with the pinky on the 7th fret. So, and you can play this little bass line a bit springy, sort of staccato. So no, don't really drag everything out. It has to have a little bit of an upbeat vibe. Then you head into that first chord, which is an A major 7th voicing. Pinky 7th fret on the D string, ring finger 6th fret on the G string, middle finger 5th fret on the B string, index finger 4th fret on the high E string. Nothing too difficult yet. You just arpeggiate down. You can use basically whatever you want. You can pick each and every note with the thumb pick as you were using a flat pick. I'm mostly of the time using 2 strings with the thumb pick and then switching to fingers. So thumb pick, index finger, middle finger. And then once you arrive at that 4th fret on the high E string, you drop the index finger down to the 2nd fret. It's not possible to keep your classical or let's say your professional playing posture going and each and every finger perfectly upright. Your index finger sort of drops sideways on that 2nd fret, and even then it probably won't be possible for everyone. So arpeggiating down, dropping to the 2nd fret and just coming back up. This triad up here, 7th fret, 6th fret, 5th fret, stays where it is, and you just return all the way back to the D string. Once you end up there, the pinky moves to the 9th fret. You add the middle finger to the 7th fret on the G string, ring finger 7th fret on the B string, index finger 5th fret on the high E string. not an easy chord, and it gets worse. You arpeggiate in the exact same way, going down. Index finger drops down 1 fret to the 4th fret while keeping everything else in place, and you round out this little phrase with a small triad on top using the G string, B string, and high E string. Ouch. Maybe just for clarification, this is an E dominant 9th voicing without the root note anywhere in there. So for reference, if I just play a low E bass note underneath it, it might sound a bit clearer. That is the full sound of the chord. But still, it's really difficult on the left hand. If you practice this, make sure not to overdo it. Small steps, 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes. Stuff like this is really easy for your left hand to start cramping up. You are building up tension over time. So by repeating this 3 or 4 times, even now I can feel this in my left hand starting to build up. Whenever that happens, you can just shake off the tension and start again, and don't overdo it. Don't go and practice this for 1 hour each day. You will get problems in the left hand. And again, this is a lot harder to do really slow than to do it up tempo. The longer you stretch out that stretch in time, the harder it becomes. And yet that's what I'm going to try to do. 1 time really slowly through those 2 chords. And the second time around, you don't play that bass note, you just start straight on the A chord. As if it's not bad enough to have to play that stretch, you have to do it 2 times in a row. After that second time, you end up on an open E string, and you add in the pinky on the 7th fret of the B string, and this is sort of the leading into the melody of the first verse. And you're off for the rest of the tune. So, one more time, I'm going to try and play this really slowly through the whole intro, then I'm going to come back with an alternative. No bass line now. And then the melody into the first verse. We'll get to that in just a second. Now, this is probably not possible for everyone. Even with people with larger hands, that stretch is quite demanding. So I went looking. A lot of what happens in this tune is based on, let's say, previous century guitar techniques, and I can imagine that if people would try to arrange this song nowadays, they probably would come up with a different solution. And that's what I went looking for. And I found an alternative that is not as demanding for the left hand, but it does require quite a bit of focus in the picking hand, because we are going to use an open string run. So we're going to mix fretted notes higher up the neck with a few open strings. This is how it sounds. What I try to do is really to keep as much of those arpeggiated notes ringing out while going for an easy fingering. The first thing I did was I went for an harmonic at the 12th fret instead of that bass note at the 7th fret. So the run-up now becomes, in the bass line, 7th fret with the index finger, 9th fret with the ring finger, 11th fret again with the ring finger, and then a harmonic on the 12th fret on the A string. So. Then I go for the top shape of that A major 7th chord, only using the ring finger, middle finger, and index finger. That leaves the pinky open to drop down to the F sharp 7th fret on the B string. That was the one you had to stretch for before. Now we're just playing it here on the 7th fret. pinky and now you remove the index finger, so you get an open E string on top. And now you sort of have to focus because that note on the B string sounds higher than the note on the E string, and our brain is pretty much wired in that way that when we switch to a thinner string that we expect a higher sounding note, and that is not going to be the case throughout the rest of this run. And now switch out the ring finger for the middle finger and drop down the ring finger on the 7th fret on the D string. This is done so we can keep as many notes as possible ringing out throughout the next section. Switch. Play the middle finger on the G string and then 7th fret on the D string. This chord voicing. So you start in this chord shape, you end up with this chord shape. Now remove the pinky, open B string underneath there, and then you add or you switch the ring finger to the 7th fret on the G string, pinky 7th fret on the B string, index finger 5th fret on the high E string. Starting from that open B string and dropping down, so you get that same small triad but without that one bass note or that one lower sounding note on the 9th fret there. So starting from this chord shape, removing the pinky, open B string, ring finger on the G string, pinky on the B string, index finger on the high E string and dropping down. That is the 2nd chord, again a lot easier to play. So this is the full run. And while going through that run, I try to keep everything ringing out as long as possible. Again, the 2nd time, no bass line, just the harmonic. And now the good news is the pinky is already where it needs to be for the 1st chord of the verse. Open E string, pinky 7th fret, and you're off into the verse. So that is a nice little bonus there. The pinky is already where it should be, no need to put in any extra work. So one more time, really, really slowly. No bass line now. Straight into the 1st verse. Maybe just one time, a little bit more up to tempo. So you get sort of a sense of what the effect can be. So I really hope this alternative gives you some new hope, some new spirit, because that first stretch has probably put off so many people over the years of even attempting the rest of the song. And this is actually quite doable for the left hand, but you do have to focus a little bit more in the picking hand. That being said, I think it's time we tackle the verse one time, all the way through it, as always, a little bit below concert speed, and then all the explanation will follow on the other side. that is already what I consider to be at least the second verse, maybe not, but the second part of the verse. First, let's have a look at this, because the second part is mostly variation on what you just saw. As I stated in the intro, the picking pattern isn't too difficult, but the chord voicings can be tricky because most of us aren't really used to playing those kinds of jazzy voicings anymore. We start out with an A major 13 chord, open A string, ring finger, 7th fret on the D string, middle finger, 6th fret on the G string, pinky, 7th fret on the B string, and the index finger, 4th fret on the high E string. As will be the case for most of the verse, we're just holding down the chord, and each and every melody note we need is actually already in the chord shape. You start by just playing the high E string, 4th fret, together with the bass note on the A string. And then as you switch to the low E string, you pick the 7th fret on the B string. And then the second bar is nothing else but the bass part. And since we're only playing the bass part, people who have followed the lessons in the starting out fingerstyle course know that whenever you get the chance, it actually helps to thicken out the sound a little bit if you include the G string alongside the bass note on the D string. So instead of just playing A string, D string, E string, D string, whenever we have the opportunity, which means that when there is no melody being played above that bass line, we are going to try to add the G string to that note on the D string, and that sort of thickens out the sound a little bit. We get the opportunity for that in the second bar, since it's nothing but bass line. Double, double. Even that last bass note of the previous bar is also possible. Double, double, double. It really helps to sort of thicken the sound. Then we move to a G sharp dominant chord, bar across all 6 strings, ring finger on the 6th fret A string, middle finger 5th fret on the G string, and we're holding down all 6 strings, but we're only going to use a few of those strings. Chet mainly sticks to a 2-string bass pattern. E string, D string, E string, D string. He's not playing the A string in between, just hold it down in case you miss out with the thumb pick, then that bass note on the A string is going to sound in harmony or in tune with the rest of the chord. We stick to playing the 4th fret on top on the high E string as the melody note. E string, D string, E string, D string, another bass note, and then again you can try to add the G string to the bass note on the D string. Ring finger to the 6th fret, index finger 3rd fret on the A string, and then we move into the next chord. We'll get to that in a second. First, those first 4 bars back to back. Then we end up on the first of many dominant 9th chords. Small bar across 3 strings, G string, B string, and high E string. Index finger, sorry, the bar is on the 4th fret. Index finger, 3rd fret on the D string. Middle finger, 4th fret on the A string. That is the C sharp dominant 9th voicing, but we will also be using this on the B chord, on the F chord, and on the E chord. So make sure that you get this voicing clean, because you will have to use it a lot throughout the rest of the song too. For the melody, we are going to add in the pinky on the 5th fret as well. This is the sharp 5 or the raised 5th of the chord. And the only other thing we're going to do is you have to alternate with the middle finger between the A string and the E string for the bass line. This is how that C chord sounds. So melody is all about dropping the pinky in and out. You start out on the A string together with the pinky on the 5th fret on the high E string. sorry, I was wrong there. You first play the bass note on the A string, and then together with the bass note on the D string, you play that melody note 5th fret with the pinky on the high E string. You switch with the middle finger to the low E string, repick that same melody note. And now as you switch back to the D string, you remove the pinky and play the melody note on the 4th fret, being held down with that little bar. And as you head back to the A string, you drop down the pinky again. Again, A string, D string, all while holding down the pinky. Heading back to the low E string, and then you play the 4th fret, removing the pinky again, in between those two last bass notes. Make sure you get that timing right. Maybe try to loop that. One, two, three, four. 1, 2, 3, 4. That you get that in the exact right spot all by itself before adding in the rest of the melody again. Everything together on that small section. And then we move to an F sharp dominant chord. Chet uses the thumb over the side of the neck, 2nd fret, index finger, 2nd fret on the D string, ring finger, 3rd fret on the G string, pinky, 3rd fret on the B string, and you do need that open E string on top of there. It might seem strange with that middle finger in there doing basically nothing, but in the second part of the verse you're going to have to drop that down. And I think it makes sense to use a fingering that you don't have to change the second time around. For people who have trouble with the thumb over the side of the neck, they can switch it out using the index finger on the low E string and the middle finger on the 2nd fret, but then you will have to change something in the second part of the verse. For now, I'm going to stick with the thumb over the side of the neck. This is how it sounds. And another one of those bass runs at the end. The chord you're holding down is an F sharp dominant 7th chord with a raised 5th in the pinky. Let me maybe just play one time that same section using the index finger. So let's see what happens in terms of the picking hand. What you're playing is on the 1st beat, B string, 2nd beat, G string, 3rd beat, E string, 4th beat, back to the B string. That's the picking pattern. Underneath, 2-string bass pattern. Always just E string, D string, E string, D string. That combined. So B string together with the E string, D string and G string. Both E strings, and D string and B string. Again, possibility to add the G string to the D string, and then pinky to the 4th fret, index finger to the 1st fret on the A string. Full F sharp dominant section. Ending up on the B chord. First, before we head over there, let's add that C sharp chord and that F sharp chord together. And now, before I continue, let me play those first 4 chords back to back all the way to the point we just reached. And into the B chord. The B chord is probably going to be a challenge. You head back into that B dominant ninth voicing, same one we used for C sharp, but you're going to have to add in your pinky on the 4th fret this time. This is how it sounds. Not an easy chord shape, but I'm going to show you an alternative in just a second. For those of you who can cope with this, again, quite large stretch, you start out with just the bass note on the A string, then you add in the pinky on the 4th fret. You alternate after playing the D string and the E string together, you alternate with the middle finger to the low E string, you repeat the same melody note. And then as you move back to the D string, you drop out the pinky and play the 2nd fret held down with the bar on the high E string. That's the 1st bar. As you move back the middle finger to the A string, you drop down the pinky again. With a small arpeggio in there. So for the 2nd bar straight away, that's the opening. So A string together with the high E string, arpeggiated note on the B string, still holding down with the bar, bass note on the D string, and removing the pinky. And then the last thing you have to do in that bar is alternate again to the low E string. Not an easy section, with that 1st bar included. Now, being able to play this requires quite a reach of the left hand, but there is an alternative. Instead of going for that B dominant 9th chord, you can just go for a B dominant 7th voicing. Bar across all 6 strings on the 2nd fret, and usually you play this chord like this with the ring finger and the pinky. If possible, now go for the middle finger and the ring finger, and then you have the pinky open to add that melody note on the 4th fret. What are you missing? The 9th degree of the chord. This is that C sharp on the 2nd fret is the 9th degree of the dominant chord, and we're basically tossing that out in order to play a bit of an easier voicing. It's a colorful note, but rather be able to play the whole song and miss that one colorful note instead of just dropping the song altogether. This is what you get with that alternative voicing. So the only thing that sounds different is that one arpeggiated note in there. Everything else sounds almost exactly the same. Holding down A string with the pinky on top on the 4th fret to the low E string and getting back to the D string, removing the pinky. And then dropping the pinky back down and removing again and completing the bass line like that. Sounds a little bit different, but it is an alternative for those of you who can't manage to get that stretch all the way up to that melody note here going. So I rather have that you play something like this and get through the whole tune than to drop it all together. After that B chord, I'm going to head back now to the original voicing. End up in an E dominant 13 voicing, open E string, middle finger 2nd fret on the A string, open D string, index finger 1st fret on the G string, ring finger 2nd fret on the B string, and an open E string on top. Again, we're moving to a 3-string bass pattern, but the melody on top lands most of the time exactly on the bass note. First 4 notes are exactly the same thing. E string, B string, D string together with the G string, A string and B string, and again, D string and G string. That's the the only difference that last melody note, second fret, is being pulled forward by 1/8 note and being played in between two bass notes. And another bass run. I now played it with the middle finger and the pinky, second fret, fourth fret, to an open A string. If you want to go full Chet Atkins, you can also use a different option, because the fingering you now use to play that bass run is determined by what you are going to play in the next bar. Because Chet goes for the thumb over the side of the neck on the 5th fret, playing a small A triad on top, but you're not forced to do that, or you're not obligated to do that. You can use the open A string just as well. So if you go for that open A string, then the fingering going up becomes middle finger, ring finger to the open string. If you're going to use the thumb over the side of the neck, then you are going to use the thumb as well for the 2nd fret, the 4th fret, and ending up on the 5th fret. So going for the open string, to the open string, now with the thumb, and ending up on the 5th fret. Before we do that, first let me put that B chord and that E chord together. And now I went for the open A string. You now end up on an A voicing. 5th fret, small bar across 2 strings, middle finger on the 6th fret on the G string, ring finger 7th fret on the D string, and you are going to start out with the pinky on the 7th fret as well. Now when you see Chet play this in the live version, he uses the thumb over the side of the neck on the 5th fret. And he alternates with the thumb between the 5th fret and the open string, 5th fret and the open string. It sounds like this. You can actually play the exact same thing using the open strings. The reason why I think Chet is using the thumb here is because in the next verse we are going to modulate, we are going to head into a different key, and in that key there probably won't be any other option than to use the thumb over the side of the neck, and I think maybe he just wants to stick to the same chord fingerings or the same chord voicings each and every time. If you want to take it slow in this first verse, then you can just as well go for those open strings. The melody on top is you start on the 2nd beat with that 7th fret with the pinky. 1, 2. And after those first 2 melody notes on the 7th fret, it's always just alternating 7th fret, 5th fret, 7th fret, 5th fret. Chet does add in the 6th fret on the G string as well. Not including the E string or the E note on the B string in between those two. This is how it sounds with the open strings. So really slowly. Bass note, then together with the bass note on the D string, the G string and E string. Repicking the same melody notes as you head to the low E string. And as you return to the D string, removing the pinky. And then the next bar is just alternating. On the A string is the pinky down. On the D string, pinky is gone. On the E string, pinky is down. On the D string, pinky is gone. With that previous bar attached to that. And now with the thumb, then you are going to stick to a 2-string bass pattern, but you are going to let go of that low E string each time you alternate to the D string. And it feels strange with that thumb up and down the neck, especially because this feels so natural. but I guess Mr. Atkins had his reasons. After that, we move to yet another dominant ninth chord. We are just going to play the melody on the 8th fret, so this time we're heading for an F dominant ninth chord, same voicing as before. Just playing the melody note on the first beat together with the A string, bass note, alternate again to the low E string with another melody note and back to the D string. And again, if you can, add that G string to the D string as well. Then we drop down 1 fret, we add in the pinky to the 9th fret. Exact same chord voicing as down here, but it's probably a bit easier for everyone around the 7th fret. E dominant 9th voicing, dropping down the pinky gives you E dominant 13. Again, melody note on the first beat. Remove the pinky, alternate with the middle finger to the low E string. And again, just a bass note in between there. And that is the full first half of the verse, or the full first verse, however you want to look at it. I'm going to put that A chord together with that F and E chord one more time. Now, starting from that B voicing, those last 8 bars all the way through. Straight into the second part of the verse. Let me play everything what we saw up to this point all the way through, and then hopefully you'll see that the next section of the verse is mostly repetition, apart from the final few bars. Here we go, the verse all the way through to the point we just reached. Into the second part of the verse. Let me play through that second part one time, and as always, I'll see you on the other side. Straight into the intro of the next verse, which is in a different key. So that is when the whole song shifts to a different key than we are presently in the key of A, and then all the fingerings will change, or at least move a little bit around. First, the second section of the verse. Most of what is in here you already know. Start out with the first 2 chords. Same thing as before. That's a little bit different, but the same chord shape, G sharp dominant 7. First melody note is no longer on the bass note, but in between 2 bass notes. And then again, together with the bass note, so low E string, melody note, D string, and then back, melody note together with the low E string. Then you drop down the pinky on the 7th fret on the B string, and again play that note in between 2 bass strings. And then again, we end up again on a melody note in between the bass notes, and we round out the bass line with the same walking bass run we played in the first section. Dominant ninth, C sharp dominant ninth chord. So again, those first 2 chords. Those two chords back to back. To the same C sharp dominant ninth chord before, but again with a small variation in the melody. But it's basically the same variation we already played in the first verse. So the exact same thing, only 2 frets up, with the pinky on the 5th fret and not having to do that big stretch. Dropping down to the F sharp chord. Exactly the same thing as in the first verse, but now we are going to drop down, as already mentioned the first time around, that middle finger on the 2nd fret on the B string. We're going to remove the pinky. And this is not possible if you play the chord like this. So if you chose the fingering without the thumb the first time around, using the index finger down here, then you just have to play the exact same melody. And just stick to that. It won't make that much of a difference, but this is the variation that Chet plays. And again, one note in between 2 bass notes. 2, 3. So in between that, if I will play that second bar, 1, 2, 3, only between the 3rd and the 4th bass note. 1, 2, 3. That's the only note that is being added, dropping down the middle finger, removing the pinky. From that C chord. Now we're moving into a new section, B minor. Bar across all 6 strings, adding in the standard B minor chord shape, ring finger, pinky on the 4th fret, middle finger on the 3rd fret. We start with just the melody note on the G string. So together with the A string, D string, and then add in the melody. Move that up to the 7th fret, again to a B minor chord shape. And here Chet often goes for the thumb over the side of the neck, only grabbing that chord on top of there. I think it's just a little bit easier to stick to the bar. So Chet plays thumb over the side of the neck, then ring finger 7th fret, ring finger 9th fret on the D string, index finger 7th fret, pinky on the 10th fret. But I think it's just a little bit easier coming from this bar, moving up and just staying in the bar. But then you have to make sure that you don't play the note on the A string. So bass note together with the note on the B string, G string, and then thumb pick to the D string. Then dropping down the pinky on the 10th fret, and again in between the bass notes. And you just complete the bass pattern by playing another E string and another D string. Or with a thumb over the side of the neck is a possibility as well. Those 2 chords together. And now a really tricky section. Chet plays this song on a Gretsch guitar with a cutaway. So he's got quite a good reach on those top frets, and I don't. I use a standard acoustic. So this is a tricky chord shape. Thumb over the side of the neck on the 10th fret. You then need an open A string. Ring finger 12th fret on the D string, index finger 10th fret on the G string, pinky 12th fret on the B string. This is going to get tricky. So bass note on the low E string together with the melody note on the B string. G string, thumb pick to the D string. Slower. And then repick that melody note on the 12th fret. And then you go for that low, open A bass string, which really messes with my head. Playing a bass note on the low E string this high and then having a bass note on the A string that drops down in pitch is really awkward. It really took me some time to get used to this. So, but it's going to be an advantage in the next bar. So this is the first bar, just holding down that chord shape, 12th fret, 10th fret, 12th fret, 10th fret. The beginning of the next bar is again just 2 bass notes, so you get. And then as you go for that next melody note in between 2 bass notes, you're going to perform a pull-off to the 10th fret. And as you land that pull-off on the 10th fret, you're going to aim that bass note underneath there at the exact same time. That is not easy in the beginning. And you are best off looping this for a while. Getting that timing right for that pull-off to land exactly on that bass note, because it's still the bass note that sort of takes the lead in the timing. This is the tempo you're sticking to, and you're aiming your pull-off to land on the bass note, not the other way around. Don't adjust the timing of the bass line to fit wherever that hammer-on or that pull-off falls. Make sure that you land the pull-off on the bass note. So this is the bass pattern. And the good news is that pull-off is really hard to get clean with the thumb over the side of the neck, but in that section of the bar and the bar afterwards, you don't need the thumb anymore. So you will always see me drop the thumb in order to get into the right posture to be able to pull off that pull-off. That is what happens. This is the last time I use the thumb. So as soon as I play that thumb, the first note of the second bar of that D chord, it's out of there. It immediately drops back in order to give me the right posture to get that pull-off clean. There it goes. And being able to drop away that thumb and play that open A bass string instead really makes things a lot more playable. One more time, that section on that D chord, this is to me the trickiest section of the whole song up to this point. Now, together with those 2 previous chords, starting on B minor. And then the last 4 bars, B minor. 9th, Chet again uses the thumb over the side of the neck and this small chord section on top. I often just play it with a bar across all 6 strings on the 7th fret, only adding in the pinky on the 9th fret. See, whatever works for you. Chet uses this, a small bar across 4 strings, thumb over the side of the neck on the 7th fret, pinky on the 9th fret. That's all that happens. Melody note on the first beat and the third beat. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then to our trusty friend, the E dominant 9th chord, again as we played before with the pinky on top. And now a really quick position shift that I'm going to show you an alternative for as well. Chet does this. Then the thumb over the side of the neck on the 7th fret. Play the last melody note, and that is a really quick shift, going from this to the thumb over the side of the neck and back to the A chord is a really quick shift. So what is Chet playing? Thumb over the side of the neck on the 7th fret, middle finger on the D string 6th fret, index finger on the high E string 5th fret, and immediately following that up with the 7th fret. That's the second part of that bar. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. And that shift going from this chord to this and then switching to A isn't the most difficult thing, but this to this is a really, really big shift. You could try using the ring finger, or you could just use an open E string, that works as well. Which is a lot easier, so what you get then is open E string down below, 6th fret on the D string. If you want to add in a double bass note, you can add in the 7th fret on the G string as well, and the 5th fret on top on the high E string, which you immediately follow up with the pinky on the 7th fret. And that way your whole fretting hand can stay a lot better in the same position than having to switch with that thumb all the way over the neck. So what can you do? The original Chet voicing with the thumb, using the middle finger, or using the open string. Those are our 3 options. Pick whatever you like best. Then we end up for the final time on an A chord with a small arpeggio. A string and E string at the same time, D string, melody note on the G string, to the low E string, picking the B string, 5th fret, just holding down the A chord. One more time on the D string, and then again together A string and high E string. And then you play another bass run going up into that same intro. 12th fret with the pinky on the A string, 12th fret on the A string, 9th fret on the D string, 11th fret on the D string, pinky 12th fret, and then we head into the re-intro. I'm going to show you this section in the next part of the tutorial because I'm going to show you an alternative for this intro as well. So one more time, starting from that A chord. And so on and so on. Starting from the B minor chord. And the bass run into the next intro. That was the full verse. Let me play those last 8 bars really slowly. Then into the next verse. That was the first. Let me play the second part all the way through, really, really slowly. And then we are ready to head into the first modulation. Here we go. One more time, second part of the first verse. That was the full first verse, the section in the key of A, and then for the next verse we're going to move up, but that is something for the next part of the tutorial. See you there. Bye bye.